One of the main kalim, one of the vessels in the Mishkan, which we read about its construction in this week's Parsha, is obviously the aron, which contained the luchos, which contained the Sefer Torah. And as many sources indicate, the aron was not just the vessel which contained the Torah, but the aron symbolized the Torah. You find this in numerous sources in Chazal, as well as in later Mikorot, later sources as well. As the Torah and Parashat Truma indicate, there's a prohibition to take the poles, the badim, out of the aron, and this is actually a lav. This is one of the 613 mitzvot, and anyone who does take this out takes the poles out of the aron does violate this lav, this prohibition. And the question is, what's kind of the reason behind that? Why is the Torah so adamant that the poles should not be removed from the aron? So some of the later mefarshim, the Netziv amongst them, I believe Rav Hirsch also goes in this direction, says that the symbolism of the poles not leaving the aron specifically, as opposed to the poles that were present in the other vessels but were permitted to be removed. Why in the aron were they never permitted to be removed? And this symbolizes, as the Netziv, this symbolizes the portability of Torah in each place and in each generation, that no matter where the Jewish people are geographically, no matter what time period the Jewish people find themselves in, Torah is there, Torah is able to stand up to the challenges of that particular place and that particular time. And therefore, the Torah says the badim, the pole, should not be removed from the aron in order to symbolize this portability and this immutability of the Torah. There's another aspect to the aron, and specifically the poles of the aron, which relate to the poles of the aron, which also fits into this idea. The Midrash says that when the Levium were carrying the aron, they wouldn't walk with it in the usual manner in which a person would usually walk with an object they were carrying. If you had 4 Levium carrying the aron, so normally what you would think is that those in front would be facing outward and be walking in an outward direction, facing front. However, the Midrash says that when the Levium were carrying the aron, they faced each other. So what emerges is that the Levium that were standing in front and carrying the aron were actually walking backwards, so that all 4 Levium carrying the aron were facing each other. And interestingly enough, the Rambam actually codifies this in the Mishnah Torah in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash. Some of the Mefarshim struggle with finding the source for this Rambam, but it seems to be that it's this Midrash in Parashat Bamidbar, actually. And the Midrash there offers its own reason as to why this is, why the Levium had to face each other when they were carrying the aron. But I think that this, going back to our idea from the Netziv that we shared before, I think this really fits with that theme. And that if we go back to the portability of Torah and the challenges which Torah is faced to encounter, and as we said, the Torah, no matter in the place, no matter the time, the Torah is capable of encountering and overcoming and answering those challenges. Often challenges and new questions that arise, particularly with the application of Torah, come with machloket. They come with heated debate, often with animosity between groups or between individuals within the Jewish people. And so therefore, what the Midrash is teaching us, again, as codified in the Rambam, what the Midrash is teaching us is that as you're carrying that Torah, as you're carrying the aron and everything that it represents, the Torah which it represents, from place to place, from time to time, as you're encountering those challenges, it's incumbent upon us to what? Not to be facing outward, but to be facing each other, to debate the challenges of Torah, to debate the questions of Torah, but to do so in a way that's respectful, to do so in a way that upholds the honor of Torah and that upholds the honor of those with whom we are debating. And so the aron, with all of that it represents, the Torah which it represents not only the Torah itself, but it represents the discourse with which we are to engage in the Torah and discourse with which we are to engage with each other. Thank you, and have a Shabbat Shalom.